All right.
Okay. All right. So we are going to be following kind of a three-step framework through this webinar. So we're going to be starting with the notice pause part of it, which is just being able to notice when you're feeling activated, when you feel like you're having this response, and then being able to create space in that moment before responding and being able to choose how you want to respond. And then we're going to be talking about how to reset after those difficult moments and those interactions. Just give your brain and body a reset before being able to move on. So those are our three sections for today. And just a note about taking notes. That can be helpful for just things that you really want to remember. And yeah, it might be helpful to have either a notepad or just jot down on your phone beside you going through this presentation today.
Yeah, and we'll also send out an email to everyone who registered for the webinar, and in that email we'll include a little bit of a summary of what we discussed. There'll be a couple of handouts attached as well. We'll note those as we go through some of the content, and also some resources that might be helpful for you. So some book recommendations that are on this topic, as well as possibly online courses and whatnot. So we have a little bit of a list of what we'll include. If anyone would like to follow up with Sarah or I after this session, our contact information will also be included in that email. So if you want to have a quick discovery call with us to discuss something that you're noticing day to day that maybe you'd want to bring to therapy, you have the option of a quick 15-minute discovery call, or you can book a session with either of us. And that information will also be included in the email.
So just a note on the scope for today, the focus is going to be on practical skills that you can take away with you. This is not a therapy session or a therapy group together. And so those more complex interpersonal challenges or unsafe situations like abuse situations or trauma work, that's best discussed in, as Rachel mentioned, if you wanted to book a therapy session with us, that would be the better location for that, not what we're going to be getting into today. So today we'll just be providing tools for everyday use and to bring your self-awareness up a little bit more, and hopefully you'll walk away with some help in just those everyday kind of interpersonal things that can happen. And once again, as Rachel mentioned, we do have those free 15-minute discovery calls that you can book with us. Or just go ahead and book a therapy session if there's a situation that you want to get into at a deeper level, or uncover like a deeper pattern that you're seeing in yourself, then that would be a good place for that.
Some of the key takeaways we're hoping to cover today. We do hope we get through everything, although we have about 45 minutes for some of the content, and then we'll allow for some space and time afterwards for questions if anyone has any or comments. So some of what we hope to convey is that we want you to be able to understand some of what's happening in the brain and body when we get hooked by difficult interactions or difficult conversations. Some strategies for creating space between that activation response and our response in real time within that interaction. So we'll go through this 4-step process. Obviously, it won't necessarily apply to all situations, but we do hope that there's something that you'll take away from the content today that you can use in your day-to-day life, because we are really covering some practical strategies. So we'll explore some ways to reset and protect your energy afterwards as well. We know, as many of you have probably experienced this, ruminating after a difficult exchange, and that sometimes that can happen over the course of several days. So just some ways to reset and protect your energy after those tough exchanges.
And we're going to be drawing from a couple different approaches and perspectives. These are some different approaches that Rachel draws from more, different approaches that I draw from more. So just noting that there's some different modalities out there when it comes to therapy, and we're kind of pulling from different ideas. Some of you may be familiar with some of these, and if you're not familiar with them, that's totally fine too. One thing I like to say to clients too is that finding a therapist and finding an approach that works for you can be like finding the right pair of jeans. It can take some shopping around and trying some jeans on to find the ones that work for you. Sometimes you resonate with a therapist or an approach, and sometimes we won't resonate with it too. So just knowing that it might take trying some different things and exploring a little bit. But hopefully we're covering some different approaches that will make sense for you.
And to get to know everyone a little bit more, we're going to launch a poll. Your responses are anonymous. A number of our clients have described some issues related to relationship challenges that show up particularly with parent and adult children interactions, some romantic partner or spouse difficulties, workplace or professional environments, friendships, social circles, or extended family members, in-laws, or even siblings. So if any of these apply to you, feel free to check it off. We'll give everyone a minute or two here just to check off what you're noticing in your day-to-day life so we can get a sense of where these issues are showing up for participants today. Seeing we're getting closer to about 15 out of 21 responses. So we'll give ourselves another moment here, and I'll be sure to share the results. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll there, and we'll share the results. Hopefully you all can see this. Are you able to see the results? If not, I'll just note them. It's really across the board. So today, about 5 out of 19 of you noted parent-child relational difficulties. 7 out of 19 was spouse or romantic partner. 7 out of 19 workplace or professional. 5 of 19 saying friendships or social circles. And then 7 out of 19 noting extended family members, in-laws, or siblings. And there are 4 that checked off other. And so it's a bit across the board. All right. Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, there's kind of some categories that we've found that bring people to therapy, some things that we've noticed that are common types of interpersonal challenges. The first one being in that boundaries and control category. This can be feeling judged, feeling micromanaged, things that the other person should have done or you should have done. All of those shoulds. That could be maybe as an adult child, a parent constantly telling you how they think you should be living your life. Maybe that's a supervisor at work that micromanages you, those types of situations. Then we have communication breakdowns. Those are quite common where there's misinterpretation, defensiveness. You feel like you're not heard. You're trying to explain yourself, but the other person is just not understanding you. There's many relationships, I think, where we can feel like there's just this misinterpretation happening. And then emotional reactivity. So that can be where you feel like someone makes a critical comment about you and you just immediately snap back with sarcasm or with a hurtful comment and response, and you're not even thinking, you just have this immediate response. Or the opposite, you kind of really shut down and you don't say anything, you get really quiet, and then you don't feel like yourself when you're doing that either. And then also just that replaying of the interaction over and over again. I don't know about all of you, but for me, I've definitely had a lot of those kind of daydreams where I'm replaying this argument in my head hours later, and I have the perfect responses, the best things to say back at that point. And it kind of feels good to like have those one-liners that win the argument at that point. But yeah, just for hours or days even replaying it and doing that. And then we have mismatched needs or values, competing priorities. That could be one person wants closeness, the other person needs some space. One person values being right on time, another person values kind of going with the flow. There's lots of these differences that can happen. And then another common one is unresolved resentment. And that's where these old hurts that have happened in a relationship are kind of coloring what's happening in the relationship now. Maybe someone hurt you in the past, and now just all these things they say and do are just really bothering you in the present, but it's really kind of about that thing that happened in the past. So those are 5 categories that are very common.
And we want you to know we hear you, right? We all struggle with these tough interactions. Our nervous systems are wired to react quickly, right? It's not a flaw, it's actually our survival mechanism that's doing its job. So the goal isn't to never react, that's not possible. The goal is to just notice sooner when we have that activation and to be able to respond in a way that feels more present and feels more aligned with the person we want to be and how we see ourselves. So today's roadmap, we're going to go through the notice and pause section first, and then moving to choose. How do we go about choosing a response and giving some examples? And then at the end, we'll cover some ways to reset and recharge and take good care of ourselves.
So that first step is that pause. So when we react in the heat of the moment, we can say things we don't mean, or we shut down entirely. So that first step is just taking a moment to pause, and that's what can kind of create the possibility of having a different outcome happen there. So we can think of that as putting this little wedge in the moment between the thing that happened and then what's going to happen next. And it doesn't need to be long, it can just be a few seconds, and we're going to kind of go over some ways to do that coming up. But having that pause can really change everything.
A little bit of insight here into the nervous system. As we mentioned earlier, there are different theories that we apply when we're working with clients. And one of the theories that I find I lean on quite a bit is called polyvagal theory. Some of you may know about the vagus nerve and have a bit of an understanding of the function of the vagus nerve. Within polyvagal theory, poly meaning many states of the nervous system, and that vagus nerve and its functioning, and getting a better sense of where we're at within our autonomic nervous system. So you might notice at the top here, the top rung is that ventral vagal state. Not important to understand, to remember these terms, but just knowing that that's where we feel safe and connected. I think a lot of us can relate to the feeling of being connected with another person at some point in our life. So this is where we feel calm, curious, we're able to smile at other people, they can smile at us, we're open to problem solving in a really collaborative and cooperative way. So this is a state where we want to engage from right and form healthy interactions. That middle rung is where we're mobilized. Now, depending on whether we're feeling safe or unsafe, mobilized may look like being motivated, playing a game, competing, that you have really good focus and flow. If you're feeling more unsafe or there's a threat, we might experience symptoms of fight or flight, intense emotions like anger, irritability, and or symptoms of anxiety, panic, and whatnot. Immobilized down on the bottom rung, which is the dorsal vagal or shut down. So that could look like rest and stillness, grounding and intimacy if we're feeling safe and comfortable, and also could look like numbness or collapse or isolating. So looking at the whole of these different facets, different states of the nervous system, just thinking about your own life and whether or not you relate to being in these different states and how that might apply to you.
So another perspective that we can use to kind of look at what's going on is from the internal family systems perspective, IFS. And I like understanding it as an orchestra. We're made up of all these different instruments that are playing within us. We have different parts. And as a whole, we're an orchestra. And so um, we have different parts that are trying to protect us. There's reasons why they're there. And sometimes one instrument can start playing a lot louder than another or soloing. And that can kind of be when we're feeling activated by someone. It's that part getting activated. So an example could be that someone says something critical and there's a part of you that gets really, really defensive. And if we kind of tune into where that part is coming from, where that started, maybe you had a really, really critical parent growing up where just nothing was ever good enough or ever right. And as a child, that's really crushing. That's really, really hard to deal with. And so you carry, there's this part of you, then when you hear criticism as an adult in your life, you have this strong reaction because of this part of you remembers what that felt like when your parent was that way with you. So to use the instrument metaphor, that part of you starts playing really, really loudly, and it's like this hurts. We remember how much this hurts. It's your system trying to protect you, and they all have a role and they have a part to play within you. So our job isn't to silence those parts. It's to really get to know them, get to know ourselves and what these parts of us are saying and what they're feeling, where they came from, and having curiosity. That's kind of a really key word within IFS, is having that curiosity about why we're feeling what we're feeling, what that part of us is trying to say, and then feeling compassion for that part of ourselves. And that's a really good first step to being able to pause and maybe make different choices going forward, because we feel that curiosity and compassion for ourselves and the different parts of us that are reacting in that moment. And so another thing that's going on is our prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain here that we can see on, I guess it's kind of a pink in this slide. And this is something biologically that happens to us when we feel that we're under threat. And that can be a social threat. It doesn't need to be like a bear is actually chasing you, but our brain perceives a threat. And so the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that has all of our executive functions. It's calm, it's logical, it can plan, it can choose different responses really logically. In those threat moments, it really goes offline because it's not necessary in that moment to be able to make all those executive decisions. So it can actually be not possible to access your kind of higher thinking self. And I know for myself that this really, I noticed this when there were certain people where I'd be having maybe a little bit more of a heated argument or discussion with, and I would just notice like my heart would start to race, my breathing would go a lot faster, and I would, even though I normally consider myself to be, I have this education, I think I'm fairly intelligent, I have good arguments to make, but in those conversations, I would be unable to access any of the education I have or any of the good arguments I have. It was like my brain just went offline, and I would be really critical of myself for that. So when I realized this is actually biologically what is happening, I'm actually unable to access that part of my brain because my brain is perceiving that we're under threat right now. That was really a good step for me and feeling a lot more compassion for myself in that moment too. And the good news with that is taking a moment to pause and slow down and tell yourself that you're safe helps to start bringing your prefrontal cortex back online again. So one of the ways that we can do that is to bring ourselves to the present. So you can note what today's date is, note the current time, say where you are, like look around the location that you're at and just note where you are. And a really, really good thing is to use all of your senses to pay attention to what you can smell, what you can hear, slow your breathing down, note what you can see. All of that brings you to the present moment and really helps that pause and bringing your prefrontal cortex back online. And especially slowing your breathing is very helpful because, again, for me, I've noticed my breathing will be going faster, my heart rate will be going faster. So when you consciously slow it down, that starts to tell your brain, oh, we're not actually about to die. Maybe we're actually safe. It starts that process. So it's a good place to start is bring yourself to the present moment.
And right now we can kind of all maybe feel the seat under ourselves, feel our feet on the floor, right? Just noticing that. A couple of other skills that are helpful for regulating in those moments where we feel really activated, and these are things you can practice anytime, right? It's always best to practice these types of skills, some of what Sarah just described with bringing ourselves into the present moment at times when we actually feel okay, because that's how we can develop that skill so we can use it at times when we're feeling dysregulated or feeling that activation, right? So one helpful tip is also to look for a resource spot. So if you look around the room you're in right now, and maybe, just in front of me, I have a beige wall, right? That's a pretty grounding spot for me. There's not a lot going on that beige wall. Maybe there's a window that you can look out, or possibly a plant, right? Or some object that feels more neutral. And it may even, for some people, it might be just looking down towards your feet that are planted on the floor. So bringing your eyes there as needed and then back to the other person can also function as a way of grounding within difficult conversations. You might be thinking, I kind of already do that, right? Sometimes when we, pinpoint something and it's on a slide, it helps us realize that maybe that's a strategy we're already using. Now, when distress is quite high, the stop skill is really helpful. This is particularly helpful for people who have more of a tendency to go from kind of 5 to 10, right? Where functioning is already at a bit of a simmer, and it's not a far stretch to get to a 10 with anger or irritability or snapping. So noticing that boil up and stopping. And I mean completely freezing in place. And then taking a step back. I'm just going to back away from my computer just so you can see what I mean. In space, taking a step back. As you can imagine, this backward motion is easing off, right? It's taking our foot off the gas and also mentally taking a step back, checking in, just like Sarah had mentioned earlier, with grounding ourselves in the present moment. We're observing what's happening internally. Whoa, what's showing up for me right now? Right? What am I noticing? My heart's racing a little bit. Just noticing a little bit of a heat, right? Coming up, a flush coming up into my face. Noticing that internal response and where am I right now? Who am I interacting with? And then doing our best after that quick pause to proceed mindfully. And mindfully sometimes might be, I need to leave the room right now. I'm just gonna take myself out of this situation for a minute, to be able to decompress and reset. And part of this is a DBT skill. Part of DBT is being effective. So not making the situation worse, right? Walking away, feeling that sense of that we did our best and that we can maintain our self-respect even after difficult exchanges.
So similarly to kind of that mindfulness that Rachel was talking about, learning to spot the activation, how that shows up in your body, and thoughts and emotions is a really good practice to have. Is your heart racing? Do you clench your teeth, clench your jaw? Are you feeling frustrated? What are the thoughts that are running through your mind in that moment? What are you noticing kind of in these different categories? And when you're able to start spotting that activation, and even you can start catching it earlier even, when you start to notice your heart going a little bit faster, and if you've been paying attention to that being activation, you know that you're, something is responding to that moment. So we can practice that in this moment right now. And if you feel comfortable, it can be helpful to close your eyes and just take a moment to think about a recent interaction that felt frustrating or stressful. Bring that moment, that interaction to mind, and then just start tuning into what you can feel physically in your body right now. Do you feel your heart beating a bit faster? Can you feel yourself getting warmer? That can be a common one. Does your jaw clench? Is there, a ball of tension in your stomach? Just starting to pay attention to those internal cues and what happens physically for you. See if you can internally, just going back to that one, Rachel, and just seeing if you can internally describe what you're feeling to yourself. And then just opening your eyes again and seeing if you can also practice the skill that Rachel mentioned earlier. Try to find a spot in the room that feels calming or neutral even, or grounding, and just take a slow inhale and an even slower exhale to bring yourself back to the moment. And so just noticing that that's one example of this pause that we're talking about, noticing the activation that you experience and then being able to find a grounding experience following that. So the next section is going to be the choose section. And this is where, after the pause, we're really able to make a decision in line with our values and the way that we want to be proceeding. So we're going to kind of follow 4 steps of regulating, feeling curiosity, validation, and then responding out of that values. If clear boundaries are needed, we'll go over that. So we're going to go over a couple of scenarios following these steps.
And up front, just thinking about values and what matters most to you. So our poll earlier, there are a variety of different challenging interactions that some participants on this webinar today have experienced. Thinking about that interaction, what matters to you most with that interaction, right? What's your intention with this person? What are you hoping for? Is it connection? Is it integrity? Do you want, is it self-respect? Right? So checking in with that part of you that knows what it is that you want. And I mean, sometimes there's no right answer, right? Your values might change from one situation to another with the same individual even, but just thinking about that as a component of being able to frame your interaction according to what's most important to you.
So we'll go over 3 different scenarios, giving these kinds of 4 steps as an example. So in this first scenario, this is handling criticism without escalating. And the scenario we have is someone says to you, "You never help out around here." So maybe this is a partner or a roommate, someone where there's this relationship where you're both contributing to a household, I suppose. So the first step that we want to do is that regulation step, and just like we practiced in that in that quick exercise, noticing the activation that you're experiencing and slowing your breath down, your feet on the ground, feeling the stability of the floor under you, and just breathing slowly. So first, that kind of regulation step, pausing, slowing down. And then if we can feel some curiosity, that can really, really help. Notice what parts of you are reacting to that statement. Is there a defensive part that you're noticing? Maybe, again, maybe you had a parent that was really, really critical and you were never able to please them with cleaning up around the house, so you're reacting defensively from that experience. Or maybe in a previous relationship, the best way to keep the peace was kind of people pleasing, doing whatever they needed. So you're noticing this pleaser response where you just want to do what they are asking for. So just this is going to be different for everyone. So just noticing the part that's reacting and having curiosity, that helps you take a step back and notice what's going on for yourself. And then it's also really helpful to notice and have curiosity about what's going on for them and why they would make that statement. Do they feel really stressed and overwhelmed when things are dirty? Is that where that comment is coming from? Do they really value tidiness and it's really difficult for them when it's not tidy? So having curiosity about the parts that are going on for them can be really helpful too. And then being able to validate that. I hear you. I know a clean space is important to you. It's really helpful in like diffusing situations and where the other person's coming from when you're able to validate something in them. It's this, I hear you, and actually meaning it. You understand where they're coming from. If you're able to communicate that in some way, that's really helpful. And then responding in a values-based way. So we're assuming that you really value this relationship in this scenario. So you want a response that's valuing that relationship. Can we have a conversation where we can figure out a balance that'll work between us? You're trying to find a way to work together in this scenario. So you're responding, you're able to take a moment and understand what's going on, and then propose, how do we figure this out together?
We'll go over these next two examples pretty briefly, only because you've seen the format already. So the idea of regulating as a first step, in this case, it's pressure without pleasing. You can see that word should there, right? Noticing ourselves use the word should towards ourselves, towards other people, it does have that sense of pressure. Right? So responding to pressure without pleasing. The example, you should go back to school. It's what's best for you. It could be you should lose weight. It could be you should, take that promotion, whatever the should might be. Regulating first, and then curiosity. So notice, how do I feel right now? Noticing some maybe frustration or feeling a bit guilty, possibly. Who knows? It depends on the circumstances. So considering what's coming up for you and also what's coming up for that other person. Education and security might be really important to them, right? Or whatever that value is for that other person. So just when it comes to validation, what we're validating is the emotion. I can understand why you'd feel that way, or validating the value. In this case, I can appreciate that you care about my future, right? I'm important to you. So responding with a values-based response, meaning I want to maintain the relationship with this person. And so maybe I'd say something like a little bit of an undertone of a boundary. I need some time to decide what's right for me. And also a gentle response in order to maintain that relationship.
And then similarly with this final situation as well, where the person says, you didn't call last week, you must be upset with me. So this assumption that that you're upset with them, and maybe the initial feeling that you feel is getting defensive about that. So the same 4 steps here, just taking that moment to regulate yourself and notice the activation that you're experiencing. Notice the feelings that you have. There's guilt or shame or that defensiveness coming up. And again, the value that might be there for them, that they might value regular connection with you, and being able to validate that. I know that it's important for us to stay in touch. And then a response could be just saying, and keeping things shorter might be better in some circumstances. So simply saying, I'm not upset at all. I just had a full week. Let's chat one night this week. So just not getting into a long conversation, keeping a short statement like that, and finding a way that you're still maintaining the relationship and the connection with them.
So I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to skip over the content on boundaries, but what I'll do is I'll create a handout and everyone can read through that information after the webinar, just making sure that if you're interested or curious about boundaries, I'll also have a book recommendation. In some cases, one of the main challenges with boundaries isn't that people don't understand necessarily how to set a boundary or what boundary they may want to set, but having the ability to do that, right? Due to sometimes difficulties with assertiveness, right? Or difficulties with even using your voice to be able to let the other person know about what that boundary is, about what's okay with you and what's not okay with you. So I'll be sure to share that via email. We have also a try it out scenario, just a little synopsis here. We'll also send that via email as a handout, just to kind of reiterate some of what we covered here for strategies for communication. So resetting, we'll just take a couple of minutes here to go over some of these ideas. After tough moments, we need some way to recharge and to, be able to move forward, right? And hopefully shift out of rumination. Not all of these strategies would be helpful for you. You might, it really does take some experimentation to learn what works for you. I just had a chamomile tea that's helpful for me. So Sarah, you go ahead.
Yeah, so one thing is moving your body, and this is really, really helpful. Literally shaking yourself, shaking your arms and legs, your whole body. It's a similar process. If you notice animals, when they experience something traumatic or something stressful, they do a big shake afterwards. And then that really discharges the adrenaline and the other chemicals that come into your body when you're in that kind of heightened state. So it's actually, it's similar for us where we can discharge that stress the same way. So literally shaking or taking a walk outside can be really, really good, 5 to 10 minutes, or stretching or dancing, doing something really silly movement, silly dancing. Communicates to your body that the threat is over, that you're safe. So one of these forms of movement is a really great way to start resetting.
I'm going to skip that one. We'll pause on this one for a minute, okay? And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so journaling can be a really great way to process, just writing down your thoughts and feelings following an experience that can continue to help you getting to know yourself, just knowing what your responses are by having kind of this record of that. And then noticing those body sensations that you experience, the activation, and then having this mindful pause. You can do a short meditation. Doing a breathing exercise is really great. An exercise I really love is placing my hand over my heart. And I have a couple phrases that I use for myself. And one of them is, I'm doing the best that I can. And the other one is, be gentle. And for me, that means be gentle to myself. And it's just a reminder for me, to be kind to myself, to feel that compassion for yourself, to know you're doing the best that you can. And that can really help in resetting that moment and feeling, rather than feeling more critical of yourself, it helps to be able to come from a place of compassion for yourself.
Talking to a trusted friend, doing something enjoyable. We had a dog shaking on our slide a couple of slides ago. Some of you might have pets. I mean, spending time with animals and in nature, I'm sure a lot of you know is extremely helpful and very, very, very good for the mind and body. A quote just before we go into our wrap up: changing one's own behavior is a much more promising strategy than insisting on change from the other. So that's from Terry Real. He's the author of one of the books I'll be recommending in some of the resources afterwards. There's another statement from Terry Real that I find really helpful, particularly for interactions where the person that we're speaking to is someone we deeply care about, right? Where he says to remind yourself that this is someone you love, right? And sometimes it's hard to remember that. So some final takeaways. We have everything on the slide here that we covered today. Um, the getting curious, validating as a first response, validating the emotion or the values, and also making dissolving conflict and not escalating conflict the priority, in fact, right? We can always repair later if needed. There are a variety of strategies in that area as well, which we didn't cover today, but taking care of yourself afterwards, right? So we have some time now for some questions or comments. I wanted to mention that I'm going to stop the recording here. So I'll stop the recording there.